In this lecture, we are going to discuss agencies of pollination. Pollination is the process of transfer of mature pollen grains from anther to the stigma of flower, of the same flower or of another flower. We have studied that agencies are strictly required in case of allogamy and occasionally required in case of autogamy. Now let us discuss what are the different types of agencies which are involved in the process of pollination. There are basically two types of agencies of the pollination. One is called as abiotic agencies and the second one is called as biotic agencies. Abiotic agencies are physical or non-living factors. So we have to mention that these are the physical factors or non-living factors you can say, and biotic agencies, those are related with living organisms. Under abiotic agencies of pollination, or what we call it as physical factors responsible for pollination, there are mainly two. The first one is called as wind and the second one is called as water. On the basis of these agencies, type of pollination is of two different types. When wind is involved as an agency of pollination, the type is called as anemophily. Here, the term anemos in Latin, it means wind. So when pollination occurs by means of wind, the type of pollination is called as anemophily. Similarly, when water is working as an agency for pollination, then it is called as hydrophily. So, anemophily and hydrophily, these are the type of pollinations which are conducted by abiotic agencies of pollination like wind and water respectively. On the other hand, the second type of pollinating agency is biotic and is mainly related with living organisms. Now the question is, which living organisms are involved in or working as an agency for pollination? The answer is very simple. Those living organisms which are showing locomotion will involved in the process of pollination. And now the answer is only animals are involved in the process of pollination, which is classified under biotic agencies of pollination. And therefore, these biotic agencies are the type of pollination in which biotic agencies, especially animals, are involved for pollination. It is called as zoophily. Where the term zoo, it indicates the occurrence of animal as the pollinating agent, and the type is called as zoophily. Let us discuss the first type of pollination under abiotic agencies, and that is anemophily. We have already studied that. Anemophily is the type of pollination which occur by means of agency of wind, and the plants which are showing the anemophily, they are called as anemophilous plants. Now let us discuss the important characteristic feature of the anemophilous plants, due to which they are favoring the process of anemophily. They are supportive to the wind to carry their pollen grains. We are going to discuss the characteristic feature. The important characteristic feature of anemophilous plants or anemophilous flower is such flowers are very small in size and inconspicuous. The term inconspicuous in Marathi or in our local language, it is called as aspashta. You cannot guess that the particular structure you are merely observing is a flower. It is very simple, it is very minute. You can't understand the structure which is present in your hand you are observing is a flower. But still it is the reproductive structure. Such flowers are called as inconspicuous flower. Those are very small in size. Second important thing is, in case of anemophily, the pollinating agent is wind, which is the non-living or physical factor. So there is no need to attract the pollinator towards the flower, and therefore such flowers are colorless. So there is no need to produce bright color to attract the pollinating agent. They are odorless, no need of producing the sweet scent, and they are nectarless, because wind is not going to feed on the nectar produced by the flower. So there is no need to develop much modifications in the flower, and the reason why these flowers are small and inconspicuous, very simple kind of flowers they are. Important thing is, the plants which are showing anemophily or wind pollination, they used to produce the flowers which are unisexual in nature. So when we use the term unisexual flower, male flowers and female flowers, they are produced separately or differently on different plant or on the same plant. But in case of anemophily, the male flowers are produced in more number than that of the female flowers, and male flowers are located at the higher level than that of the female plant. So these flowers are present at higher level. The reason behind this particular arrangement is, let us see in a diagrammatic way. We are going to select the example of maize. Maize, in which male and female flowers are born separately on the same plant. Female flower is produced in the form of cob. In our language it is called as kanis. So see the level. And the male flowers, those are produced in the bunch or cluster like this, which are situated at higher level. So male flowers, number wise they are more than that of the female flower, and they are situated at higher level. The reason behind it is very easy to wind to carry the pollen grains, and therefore male flowers are more in number and they are situated at higher level. This part is very essential to understand. The next characteristic feature of anemophilous plant is, such plants, they are having the special kind of stamens. These stamens are with long filament. Due to presence of long filament, the stamens will extrude out. They will come out of the flower, and again they are having versatile anthers. This part, that occurrence of versatile anther, is the very peculiar and important characteristic feature of anemophilous plants. Let us discuss what is the meaning of versatile anther. This is a very simple kind of flower born on the anemophilous plant, and this is the long filament. And on the long filament, this is the particular structure, what we call it as versatile anther. Let us zoom it out to study. Versatile anther is a bilobed anther which is connected to the filament in such a way that it can swing in all possible direction when it is coming in the contact of wind, so that the pollen grains which are present in these anthers, they can be easily dusted in the wind and carried along with the wind for a long distance. So such kind of anther is called as versatile anther. And this versatile anther is exposed towards the outer side, exposed towards the wind, to the wind, by means of a long filament. So this characteristic feature, presence of versatile anther, is a very important characteristic feature of anemophilous plants or anemophilous flower. Again, one important thing is, these plants used to produce large amount of dusty pollens. Huge number of pollen grains are produced, because when agency is required in carrying the pollen grain, there is more chance of pollen wastage. So large number of pollens are formed. Those are very small, minute, dust-like pollens. Such pollens are dry and unwettable, so they can easily carried along with the wind. So this is one more important characteristic feature of anemophilous flower. Next important characteristic feature is related with the styles, which is the part of female reproductive structure, what we call it as gynoecium. But in case of anemophilous flower, these styles are very long and they are having feathery nature like this. This feathery nature is very helpful to trap the pollen grains which are coming along with the wind, and such pollen grains are trapped here on the style and easily produce the pollen tube and favors the process of pollen germination, and thereby fertilization. So presence of long styles, you can observe the styles in maize. These are the longest styles present in the universe. So these styles are very long, and their feathery nature is very important to trap the pollen grains which are coming along with the wind. This is again a very important characteristic feature of anemophilous flower. Next important feature of anemophilous flower is this type of pollination is considered as most primitive type of pollination. Now this is the most primitive type of pollination. We are going to study different types of pollination one by one, but the question can be asked in your competitive exam like NEET exam and CET etc. That question is very important. This part is very essential, that which is the most primitive type of pollination. Then your answer is anemophily is considered as most primitive type of pollination, and it is mostly shown by the plants like zea maize, then wheat, then sugarcane, and many other grasses. You are very much aware of that Poaceae is called as grass family, and most of the grasses, many grasses, almost all grasses, they used to show anemophily. But evolutionary, Poaceae belongs to monocots, and monocots are evolutionary advanced. Now this group of plant, if it is evolutionary advanced, then how can we say that anemophily is the most primitive type of pollination? Now this is the very important part. This is the question for you people. You have to find out if such kind of pollination is mostly seen in monocots, in grasses, or what we call it as family Poaceae. This group of plant is evolutionary advanced, then why anemophily is considered as most primitive type of pollination? You have to find out the answer, and you have to mention the answer in the comment section. This is the homework for you guys. In this way, let us summarize the important features of anemophilous flower. Importantly, the flowers are very small and inconspicuous. Then versatile anther are present. These anthers are supported with long filament, is important. Then styles, they are again long and feathery. Pollens are produced in large amount and dusty in nature. Pollens are dry, smooth and unwettable. Unisexuality is seen. Male flowers are more in number and at higher level. So these are the important characteristics to summarize the features of the anemophilous flower. Examples are in front of you. Most of the grasses like maize, sugarcane, many other grasses, the family Poaceae is showing the characteristic feature of pollination, and that is anemophily. The second type of pollination which occur by means of abiotic agencies is called as hydrophily. In this type of pollination, the pollens are transferred by the agency of water, and therefore the plants which are showing pollination by means of water, they are called as hydrophilous plants. Let us discuss the important characteristic feature of hydrophilous flowers or hydrophilous plants. First and foremost is the flowers are small and inconspicuous. Very small, minute flowers are present. Secondly, the agency of pollination is abiotic, or physical factor is there, so there is no need to produce bright color, sweet scent and nectar. Such factors, such modifications are not required by the agency of water. So flowers are colorless, odorless and nectarless. Third important thing is The plant parts and the pollen grains, they are unwettable. Floral parts and pollens, they are unwettable. So these characteristic features are very similar to that of anemophilous flower, but in case of the third characteristic, these structures are unwettable, but those are specifically due to a coating of mucilage. It is quite different. It is not seen in the anemophilous plants. Anemophilous flower is the specific characteristic feature of hydrophilous flower. Last characteristic is very essential. In such flowers, the specific gravity of pollens is maintained, or it maintains equal to that of water by presence of or by formation of starch grains in pollens. So it is again the very peculiar characteristic feature only seen in hydrophilous flowers or hydrophilous plants. Now, what is the use of maintaining the specific gravity of the pollens which is equal to that of water? Due to this particular characteristic, pollens can float below the surface of water or on the surface of water. They will not sink down, and this is very favorable to transfer the pollen to a long distance by the agency of water. These are the different characteristic features of hydrophilous plants, or the plants which are showing hydrophily. On the basis of site of pollination or location of pollination, the hydrophily is again classified into two different types, and those are hypohydrophily. The name itself suggesting the location. In this case, the pollination occur by means of agency of wind, but specifically below the water surface, below the water level, and therefore it is called as hypohydrophily. The second type is in which the pollination occur by means of water, but on the surface of water, and therefore it is called as epihydrophily. So here, occur below the water surface, and this will occur above the water surface. Out of these two, the most common type of hydrophily is epihydrophily. So such questions can be asked, which is the most common type? The most common type of hydrophily is epihydrophily. Now let us discuss these two types one by one. To start with the first, and that is called as hypohydrophily. In case of hypohydrophilous flower or hypohydrophilous plant, importantly, these plants are submerged hydrophytes. It means these are the aquatic plants, those are situated or present completely below the water surface, and such plants are called as submerged hydrophyte. Second important thing is the flowers which are produced are very small, inconspicuous, without any modification. These modifications are specifically related with color, nectar, scent, etc. The floral parts are unwettable due to coating of the mucilage we have already studied. Important thing here we are going to discuss is the pollen grains. The pollens are maintaining the specific gravity by producing starch grain. They are with starch grains. So due to presence of starch grain, the specific gravity of pollen grain is maintained equal to the water. Second important thing is such pollens are needle-like. This is very important characteristic feature. We have already studied the pollen grains are oval or spherical. But here, in case of hypohydrophilous plants or hydrophilous plants, the pollen grains are not oval or spherical. They are very elongated and they are needle-like like this, and essentially they are without exine. So exine is absent in case of hypohydrophilous plants. Exine is the outer coating. So see in the diagrammatic representation. Suppose this is the pollen grain. Pollen grain is having double layered sporoderm or the pollen wall, microspore wall. The outer one is called as exine, inner one is called as intine. Exine is thick and tough, protective in nature, and intine is flexible and elastic. In case of hypohydrophily, as we have stated, exine is absent. This is very important characteristic feature. So such pollen, they lacks the exine. So they are only showing the single wall layer of the pollen grain, and that is intine, which is flexible and elastic. Now this nature is playing very important role in case of hypohydrophilous flower. We are going to discuss it in a diagrammatic way. Next characteristic feature is such plants are having stigma and style which are long and sticky. So due to presence of long and sticky stigma and style, they can easily capture the pollens which are conducted through water current and facilitate the process of pollination. So these are important features of hypohydrophilous flower. Now let us discuss how these two characteristic features are supporting the process of pollination in these plants. Suppose a submerged hydrophyte, for example, Zostera, which is a water grass, or Ceratophyllum. These are the important examples of hypohydrophilous flowers, hypohydrophily type of pollination. So these plants are submerged hydrophyte present below the water surface. Suppose this is the plant of Zostera. Male flowers are produced here. Pollen grain which is produced is a needle-like pollen grain. Now this pollen grain is conducted by the water current further for a longer distance. Another plant is located here, it is situated here. Now these are the female flowers with the long styles which are present here, sticky and long styles and stigma. Now when this pollen grain, I am going to show it in another color like this. I am showing quite large pollen grain for our sake of understanding. It is not that big, you have to understand. So this is the pollen grain which is conducted further along with the water current. When it will come in contact with the long and sticky style of female reproductive structure of or another plant, due to absence of exine, this pollen will come in contact with the style and stigma and coil it. Due to the flexible wall layer, what we call it as intine, exine is completely absent. It will coil and it will firmly attach to the female reproductive structure. It will not again drag away by means of water current. So this is the beauty of hypohydrophily. Why exine is absent? Why pollen grain is needle shaped? Why stigma and style are long and sticky? All these characteristics are quite supportive and they are favorable for hypohydrophily. The second type of hydrophily is epihydrophily, and in this case the pollination occurs on the surface of water. This is the most common type of hydrophily as we have already discussed. The characteristic features are very similar to that of all hydrophilous flowers, like flowers are very small, inconspicuous, colorless, odorless, nectarless, coated with the mucilage, so they are unwettable. Pollens are produced in large number, they are without exine. Then they are quite flexible. Then female reproductive structures, style and stigma, they are long and sticky, etc., etc. But this phenomenon is very peculiar. And to explain the epihydrophily, we are going to select the very specific example, and that example is of Vallisneria. The plant Vallisneria is obviously submerged hydrophyte. As we have discussed this, most of the submerged hydrophyte, they show hydrophily, either epihydrophily or hypohydrophily. We are going to explain the phenomenon of epihydrophily classically on the basis of example of Vallisneria. This plant is a dioecious plant. It means both male and female plants are separate. Male flowers are born on separate plant, female flowers born on separate plant, and this is the submerged hydrophyte. Let us discuss the characteristic feature. This is the water level. Plant is situated like this. Now suppose this plant of Vallisneria is a male plant and this one is the female plant. So on male plant, the male flowers are produced. So all these are the male flowers, and on the female plants, female flowers are produced. The characteristic feature of the female flower is very important, that female flowers generally show coiled pedicels. This characteristic feature is seen in case of female flower of Vallisneria. See the structure. This is the coiled pedicel on which the female flower is born. So these are the female flowers and these are the male flowers. At maturity, what is happening here? At maturity or at anthesis, the male flowers get detached from the mother plant and those will float on the surface of water like this. So these floating structures, these are the male flower. At the same time, female flower, they will show uncoiling of the pedicel, because the contact of female structure to the mother plant cannot be ruptured, cannot be broken, because the close contact is very essential for the development of zygote and thereby the embryo. So female flowers are not detached from the mother plant, but they come on the surface. Focus here, epihydrophily. Female flowers are coming on the surface by uncoiling the coiled pedicel. Very important characteristic feature. So female flower at maturity, the pedicel become uncoiled and female flower is raised on the surface of water. Due to water current, the male flower, they will come in contact with the female flower and the pollens are transferred directly from from male flower to the female flower to achieve the pollination. In this way, though the plant is submerged hydrophyte, the pollination occur above the surface of water, and therefore Vallisneria is the best example of epihydrophily. Here you have to remember, coiled pedicel is the characteristic feature of flower of Vallisneria, but only in case of female flowers and not at all in the male flower. So a quite interesting type of phenomenon is seen in case of epihydrophily of Vallisneria. Let us discuss the biotic agencies of pollination, which is occur especially by means of living organism, more specifically by means of animals, and therefore it is also called as zoophily. Different animal groups are involved in the process of pollination, and on the basis of type of animal which is involved in the process, there are different types of pollination classified under zoophily. We are going to discuss one by one. When the pollination occurs by means of insects, then it is called as entomophily. Different insects are involved in the process of pollination. Very commonly honeybees are there, ants are there, and many other different insects are there. So there are again subtypes which are seen under entomophily. For example, when ants are involved in the process, then it is called as myrmecophily. And when moth or butterflies are involved in the process of pollination, then it is called as lepidopterophily. Again, birds are involved in the process of pollination. It is called as ornithophily. Here, the term ornis it means birds. So, agency of bird is related with ornithophily. The third type is by means of agency of bats. It is called as chiropterophily. Here, the term chiropteron, it means bat. So, chiropterophily is related with bats. Snakes are also involved in the process of pollination, and it is called as ophiophily. Snails and sludge, they are also supporting the process of pollination, and it is called as malacophily. Even human being is also one of the agents for pollination, especially in controlled hybridization experiments. And that type of pollination which is occurring by the agency of man, it is called as anthropophily. So these are the different types of pollinating mechanism which are coming under zoophily by means of animal. Various types of pollinations we are going to study. As far as your syllabus is concerned, there are few types which are elaborated in detail, and those are entomophily, ornithophily and chiropterophily, and we are going to discuss these three types one after the other. To start with the first type of biotic agency of pollination, and that is entomophily. In this type of pollination, pollen grains are transferred by the agency of insects, and therefore it is called as entomophily. Here, the pollinating agent is living, and therefore the flowers which are produced in entomophilous plant are colorful, they are with sweet scent or they are fragrant, and they are producing nectar. So, the first important characteristic feature is attractive flowers with respect to their colors. So beautiful colors are there. Then fragrance is there, and producing the nectar. This nectar which is produced by the flower is helpful to feed the visiting or pollinating insect. Second important thing is, such flowers are quite large when they are solitary, means born singly on the pedicel. When it is singly produced, it is called as solitary. Such flowers are large and beautifully colored, attractive. You can take the example of rose. When such flowers are very small, minute, though they are colorful or colorless, whatever it may be, but they are very small, of very small size, such flower they will form a group, and that is called as inflorescence. So due to formation of inflorescence, it is very helpful to attract the pollinating agents, what we call it as insect. The example is sistrum. In our language, we used to call this plant as ratrani. So sistrum is the best example of forming inflorescence to attract the pollinating agents. Such plants used to produce large number of pollens, but these pollens are specifically spiny. This spiny nature, so this one is the entine, and the spiny exine is present like this. This spiny nature of pollen grain is helpful to attach the pollen to the body of visitor insect. Lastly, the stigma of the flower of entomophilous flower is weight and sticky. This stickiness is due to sugary exudate secreted by the stigma, and this is helpful to pick up these pollen grains which are attached to the body of insect easily, and therefore the sticky nature of the stigma is very helpful in entomophily. There are different insects which are performing their duties in the entomophily, and those are mostly honeybees, beetles, flies, butterflies, moths, etc. Examples of the plant we have already studied: rose is there, sistrum, bougainvillea, jasmine, etc. All these plants are showing entomophily type of pollination. With this, we are going to explain the very classic example of entomophily, and the name of the plant is salvia. The plant salvia, it belongs to family Lamiaceae, the Tulsi family. And Lamiaceae flowers are having a very peculiar characteristic feature. They are having a bilabiate corolla, bilabiate flower. It is having two leaves. The structure of flower is like this. This is leaf number 1, and this is the leaf number 2. So bilabiate corolla is there. Arrangement of reproductive structure is very peculiar, and it is like this. Now this is immature stigma which is hidden inside. This one is fertile anther, which is exposed to the internal environment. this one is called as staminode, which is the sterile anther. Now what will happen when the pollinating insect will visit the plant like this? This is the pollinating insect. It is visiting the plant. It will rest on the lower leaf, especially on the staminode. By sitting on the staminode, this is working like a lever. So the mechanism which is working here is lever mechanism. Due to this lever mechanism, by sitting on the staminode, this upper fertile anther will bend down and it will come in contact with the body of insect, and due the sticky and spiny pollen, those are get attached to the body of insect easily. So in this step, in this process, the insect is easily picking up the pollen grains from the flower. Now see how these pollens are transferred to the mature stigma. We are going to explain it in another diagram. The second flower, but this time the flower is exposing the mature stigma outside the corolla like this. So this is the mature stigma. Again, this is the staminode in this side. The anther is again here, and suppose the same insect is again visiting another flower where stigma is mature and is exposed toward the surrounding environment, outer environment. Now here insect will rest like this on the staminode, and again it is working like a lever, due to which the stigma will bend down and it will come in contact with the insect's body, and thereby this stigma will pick up the pollens which are already attached to the body of insect. So this is the classic example of entomophily. The carrier of the pollen is insect, but the mechanism is very peculiar, is very interesting, and this kind of mechanism of pollination is called as a lever mechanism. This phenomenon is very essential. Lever mechanism is characteristically seen in entomophily type of pollination, and the plant in which it is classically studied is Salvia. So the name Salvia, this is the scientific name, genus of the plant, Salvia. Then the type of pollination and the mechanism is very essential for your all competitive type of examination. The second type of biotic agency or pollination by means of biotic agency is called as ornithophily. Here ornis means bird, and therefore this type of pollination occur by means of agency of birds. This is again a biotic agency. Living organisms are involved in the process of pollination. So here the flowers are always with bright colors. Bright colored flowers are present here, like orange, blue, yellow, etc. Such attractive colors are there. Second important thing is, in such flowers, large amount of nectar is produced. Why large amount? Entomophilous flower used to produce the nectar. They also produce nectar, but as compared to entomophilous flower, ornithophilous flowers used to produce large amount of nectar, because here the visitor animal is bird, and its requirement of nectar, which is feeding on the nectar, is much more. Its requirement is more, and therefore such flowers are used to produce large amount of nectar. Again, importantly, they lack fragrance. So there is no need of fragrance. Beautiful color, bright colors, and large amount of nectar, those are the sufficient modifications for ornithophilous type of flowers. Second important thing is, the pollens which are produced by such plants, they are in large amount, and they are also spiny. This spiny nature of pollen is helpful to attach to the body or the beak of the visitor insect. Thirdly, the stigma of such plants is sticky, so that the pollens can be easily captured, picked up from the body of bird on the stigma. One very important and peculiar characteristic feature of ornithophilous flower is their corolla, or the flower structure, is very important. They are generally tubular. or funnel shaped. Now this tubular or funnel shaped nature is very important because the visiting animal is bird. They can easily dip their beak in the tubular or funnel-like structure of the corolla. Let us see in a diagrammatic way. Suppose this is a tubular type of corolla, and the visiting the visiting bird is introducing its beak inside the corolla. So due to presence of tubular or funnel shape infundibiliform, what we call it as corolla, is the characteristic feature of ornithophilous flower, and it is facilitating, supporting the mechanism of pollination because birds can easily dip their beak inside the corolla to feed on the nectar and thereby picking up the pollen grains. Many plants are showing the ornithophilous type of pollination. Few examples are Callistemon. This is the common garden plant, what we call it as bottle brush. Then Butea. In our language, it is called as Pallas. Then Bignonia, Bombax, and many other examples we can see. Not all the birds are involved in the act of pollination. Selected birds are there. For example, sunbird, hummingbird, bulbul, crow, etc. These are the very common birds which are involved in the act of ornithophilia. Next important feature in case of ornithophilous flower, to summarize in a rapid way, they lack fragrance, important thing. Their corolla is very peculiar, so it is again the essential characteristic feature. And one more characteristic which is to be explained here, that floral parts are thick and fleshy. Those are comparatively more thick and fleshy floral part because here the visiting animal is bird, which is quite large than that of insect. So thick and fleshy floral part is again the characteristic feature of ornithophilous flowers. The third and the last type which is given in your syllabus is Cheiropterophily. This type of pollination occur by the agency of bats. Bat in Latin it is called as Cheiropteron, and therefore the type is called as Cheiropterophily. It is again the biotic agency, so the flowers used to produce nectar and scent. So here, in case of flower, the floral parts are very thick and strong. They are having a very stout and strong pedicel. The flowers are generally drooping like this. Suppose this is the branch and this is the pedicel, and nature of flower is like this. It is due to the hanging nature of bat. The pedicel is very strong and flower is drooping like a bell, so that bat can easily come in contact with the nectar. So here very thick flower, strong floral parts are seen in case of Cheiropterophily type of pollination. Second important thing is they used to produce a very strong smell, and it is generally like the rotting fruit-like smell. Now this rotting fruit-like smell which is produced by these flowers which are showing Cheiropterophily is important to attract the bats for pollination. Here the nectar which is produced in far more large amount, what we call it as copious nectar, very large amount of nectar is produced by the flower because the feeding animal on the flower, on the nectar, is not insect, not a bird, but it is a bat. So copious nectar is formed. The very important and peculiar characteristic feature of all Cheiropterophilous flowers or plants, they show night blooming. Such flowers open in evening or at night because bats are active during night. So these flowers are mostly showing night blooming. To state few examples of such plants is Kigelia. In common English it is called as sausage tree. It is because of the shape, sausage-like shape of the fruit. Then Adansonia. It is called as baobab tree, or in our local language it is called as gorakchinsa. Some other example like Anthocephalus. So this Anther in our language, it is called as Kadamba. So these are the very common examples of the plants which are showing Characterophily type of pollination by means of bat. Essential characteristic feature is night blooming, a very strong smell like rotting fruits. Copious nectar which is produced is again very important characteristic feature. Last characteristic feature, they used to produce large number of pollens, and those pollens are sticky in nature. Again, their stigma is also sticky. These pollens are sticky and spiny, so that they can easily attach to the body of bat and thereby transfer to the next flower. With this, we have completed the entire account of the pollination, the mechanism of pollination, the pollinating agencies, both biotic and abiotic, and their subtypes. Hope you will understand the lecture, you will understand the content. We have given some questions to you, and we sincerely request you to answer the questions in the comment section.